Hello and welcome back. I'm Halifax, and in this video we're going to talk about how we can find shaders, the depth hack option, and I still need to explain a little bit the power of the shader dump functionality, because it's very important and it's actually a very powerful feature. So let's get started. So we'll take Broken Age again. We'll close this one, we'll close this one, we'll open this one, and we'll disable for the moment the shader stereoscopic function. So we'll set that one to false, and we still leave the enable shader dump option as enabled. We'll start the game, and we will notice the game starts in 3D. Only the image is flat again because no actual shader stereoscopy is being inserted. So yeah, we close the game, and now actually let's do it like this. So we delete everything, we start, we let the game load a little bit, it's loading, it's doing whatever it's doing. We exit the game, and now here we have a couple of shaders. So I'm going to make this one as a copy, or I'll name it the original one. We don't actually need to delete those. I'm going to open it and we have it here. And now I'm going to enable the stereoscopy back. And we're going to launch the game again. And this time we will see that everything renders in stereo. Get twice images, get menus in 3D, everything is in 3D. So we close again. Now we're going to open this one, and we are going to open the original one. Now what you will notice, and what I want to show you, is that this is the original one before we actually inserted stereoscopy, and this is the one that we dumped, or we got after we inserted stereoscopy. So basically here you can see the uniforms that we've added and the string that we've added for the stereoscopic bar. What I want to say is that the debug, the dump shader functionality or option always dumps and exports the shader that is currently being used. So even if, for example, you would insert a different thing here as a stereo string, and a different uniform injection point, it will be reflected in the shader dump. So basically all the shaders are being updated with what is currently running. There is no point in just showing the original content of the shader, but rather the current content of a shader. See, basically every shader has the stereoscopic string into it. Even this one, somewhere around here, you see? It's exactly this one. And our uniforms. So yeah, basically this is what I wanted to talk about, to say or complete about the shader dump functionality. So we can close this one, we can delete those, and we can go back. I don't want to keep it. And the next thing I want to talk about is the depth hack function. the depth hack function, you can find it here, depth multiplication factor, which is currently set on 1.0. This is a float, so it accepts any floating point values. So this one is basically gets the current depth value from the NVIDIA driver and is multiplied, which is multiplied by this value, and that depth is actually applied to the game. So if your current depth is 50% and the factor is 2, you'll actually get a depth of 100. There isn't any limitation here, so you can put even 7000 if you want, but I don't believe that will be a pleasant experience. So I'll put it on 2. Actually, I'll leave it on 1 for the second, and I want to show you why I want to show what I'm talking about. So we're hitting continue, and at some point we increased the convergence so much that the actual image looks flat while it isn't flat. If you can notice around the edge of the cupboard and the cakes here, they aren't perfectly mapping, but the depth information in the game is so little that it's almost flat. So just by modifying this to 2, launching the game again, I'll try to recreate the same scenario. You already see the separation, or the depth being bigger. We'll try and we'll start increasing the convergence again, and we are going to increase it and increase it and increase it, and we're going, and now you can see even better the edge and the cakes, that they don't match exactly, and you can see some green thing on the edge there on the left, and near the window on the right, and so on and so on. Still doesn't look very full on 3D information, but we'll get to that point in a second. So like I said before, now you noticed there isn't any menu. However, if we decrease the convergence, keep on decreasing, at some point a menu, and yeah, the mouse will appear. So what we want is basically to be able to increase the convergence on the scene on the actual game, but not break the UI, so the UI is still being displayed, which means that we need to find the shader or the shaders responsible for the UI. So that puts us or gets us to the next option. How do we find a shader that is responsible for something? Well, the answer is simple. We can either use the shader pair function, which I'm going to show in this video, or the shader compiler option, which is a much more advanced feature, and I'm going to explain it in a later video. But for the moment we are going to talk about the shader pair function of the share. Yeah. So back to the configuration file, we have the shader compiler options. So disable the shader compiler. We are going to say we want the shader compiler as enabled, and what we are actually interested is in these two options. The shaders in this range will be displayed in 2D, no stereo will be applied, good for looking for shaders. So basically this is the start vertex shader index, and this is the end, so it basically defines an interval. Now if I go back in the debug shaders, I see my first shader is number 3, my last one is 54. So I'll say let's start with shader 3. Oops. And I want to end around, I don't know, shader 10 for the start. Save the file and we go back and launch the game. So oh, now we see some part of the game is in 3D while other part is in 2D. And we get the menu, so we increase the convergence. And we get some part in 2D. Oh, so the fonts disappear while these elements and the mouse remains in 2D. See? Which means that we found one of the shaders. Let's look deeper. So it is between 3 and 10. Let's try going 5 and 10. We'll go 5 and 10. So now, hop, we already see something else is in 3D. And now if we keep, and already some things are broken, some things are in 2D, while others are in 3D. For example, this part is in 2D. See? The halos. While if we keep increasing the convergence, we can already see that everything breaks. See? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press Alt F1. That's the screenshot function. I'm going to save the current convergence. For me it's control slash. That's what I defined in the NVIDIA panel. Basically, it's this option that it's defined here. Saving game changes. That's the one I pressed. So I saved the in-game changes. We don't need that one, sorry. So if we moved from 3 to 5, that means that if I put 3 here, for example, let's see, if shader 3, number 3 is responsible for something. Well, shader 3 it is responsible for something. It's exactly responsible for this. You can see everything else is broken, but the menus are not broken. So we found the shader responsible for these menus. Let's go in game. Ooh, we can see the menu bar there, and we can see this part here, while see there something overlaps. If I increase these things remain, that bar remains, while the things on it basically moves. So the font is responsible for something else. There's another shader for the font and the icon there. So we need to find that one. So we can already say that we can make a file and say found shaders. So G respawn for some UI part bars. We call it like that. Yes, I want to save it. So now we say that from 5 to 10 do we find a shader that isn't moving? Ooh. We can't see anything. So it's clearly something Up. Can see some parts there. Everything is broken, and if we increase, everything moves. So it is, if we increase the convergence, so it is clear that the stereoscopy is still being applied on that shader. So let's go and check more to 10. There is no 10, so it was 3, 6, 8. So let's start with 11 and go all the way to 20 inclusive. So 11 to 20 will be disabled, all these shaders. So we're going to start with it. We're still seeing, aha! So now you can see this part of the font, or the font, is actually being, while this part is still moving. So we didn't find it just yet. See? Those elements are still being, to those elements basically are convergence is still being applied. So yeah, it's still being applied. So between 11 and 20 there is something. We found a shader for the main font. So which is 11, 13, 15, 16. So let's start with 11 and we go back 17. So is shader 20 actually, because now shader 20 is out of the interval, so stereoscopy will be applied on it. Yes, it's exactly shader 20. Now we don't see the font here, so basically if I say start at 20, end at 20, so it is 20, and we run it, we can clearly see this one is responsible for the main menu font. So we say shader 20 is responsible for main menu font. But the others were still not found. So we start at 23 and we go to 30. Let's go 23 to 30. So 23 to 30. We already see some elements there in the bottom part start to appear. So let's see exactly what that means. That means this, my fault. That means this bar is still being, as you can see, moving. It still moves. However, as you can see, the font on the upper part of the bar doesn't move anymore, which means we found the shader for that part, which means we need to find exactly who it is. It's 30, 23, let's see, 23 is 30, is 28. So if you put 28 is shader 30, because 30 is now out of the interval, so stereoscopy will be enabled on that shader. Now we can already see in the lower part some stuff. So it's not 28, I mean it's not 30, it's 28. So we say go to 26. So it's 28, the one that we are looking at. No, exit game. See, you can see the so it's not 28, it's 26, so we go to 23. So it's 26 or 23. Let's see. It's 23. 23 is responsible for the image. See? But it's not responsible for the text. So if I put 26, oops, and 26, you can actually see that 26 is responsible for that text. While if I save and exit, while if I go and say save and exit, well, let's see. Let's try to make it like this. Yes. So you can select save and exit, main menu. While if I go now and select load, that one is already working. So we found our shader, which is 26 exactly. So if I go and say shader 26 is responsible for the other text, you can see now in my fix that I have shader 3, shader 6, 20, 23 and 26. So 23 and 26 is still responsible for something, but I showed you exactly how you can find them. So now the easiest way, my bad, because I said 26, so 23, like I saw it before, 23 is also doing something, and that's exactly what it's doing. So 23, see, you have some 23 it's not exactly clear what 23 is doing. Let's see, what is 23 doing? 23 is the one that is responsible for this little image. So 23 responsible for loading game image. And there was also a shader number 6, which probably, remember when we put between 3 and 10 we found more than one shader being 2D. The number 6 it's exactly is the halo between Broken Age text. See? So if I put it back on -1 and -1 and I load the game again, you don't get that. See? Now it's perfectly, because the same stereoscopic values are applied to all shaders. So we can say that number 6 halo around main Broken Age title. So that's how we basically find shaders. And now that we found all the shaders that we are actually interested in this game, we actually need a way of applying these shaders. But applying shaders will be part of the next video, where we are going to talk about how we can add our modified shaders and swap them at runtime or when the shaders are being generated. And there are two little options there based on what type of engine we are using that I'm going to explain and talk about. But like I said, that will have to be in another video. So until we see again, cheerios.